Hey everybody, welcome back to Stand Up Your Tubes, where we control the tubes and the tubes do not control us. Have you ever wondered what it might be like to work with fur yarn on your Addi or Sentro circular knitting machine? Well, it works out really, really well. And the two little bears that you see were made with fur yarn and 4-ply yarn, and they turned out so cute. And they stand and they lay down because they have rotating legs. So I hope that you'll stick around and watch the tutorial, learn how to work with the fur yarn and how to stand your tubes up. And this little bear has a heart, and here she is standing up for you. So I just wanted to let you see what she looked like laying down and standing up. So here comes the tutorial. Stick around. Okay, so let's make our body. So I have a really soft, I love this yarn, and 75 rows. I'm going to close up one end. It's folded in on itself. And bring the ends together so we can figure out when we have it in half, and we're going to put a drawstring around this end. To put the drawstring in, we just go over a row, under a row, over a row, under a row, like this, until we get all the way around. And then we'll stuff out our body. Okay, so I have cut 2 pool noodles. They're just the little ones, and these are about 2.5 inches. 2.5, 2.5, even though they're a little crooked. And now that I have my tube made, I want to have 2 of these in here, one at the back, so that when I put the legs on, my body doesn't collapse shut. So I'm going to put a little stuffing in and leaving this open a little bit so we can add more stuffing or get our fingers in there if we need to make some adjustment on our pool noodle. Just a little bit to get started. Put one in facing this direction. Keep stuffing. And it's going to stay pretty far down. Okay. More stuffing in front of it. I'm going to draw this up just a tiny bit. Okay, here's our front one. And I'm just going to stuff this out, just kind of keep track of where my pool noodle is. I don't need stuffing where I'm going to be putting my needle in. I need the stuffing on the top, the bottom, but not between my pool noodle and my tube. And that's why we're leaving it open back here, so we can get to that tube, get them straightened up and in position. So I'm going to stuff mine just a little bit more and not tie this. I'll just have a bow. You know, this worked pretty good. I just got a really thin little straw. You could probably use a chopstick or something. Not that you have to, but it just holds that pool noodle in place in there. So I like it. And I have several of these little tiny straws, little plastic straws. So I'm going to line the other pool noodle up and hold it in place the same way. Okay, and now we're going to need a head. And so what we're going to do is use your favorite fur yarn, but I'm using fur yarn I ordered off Amazon, and it's 71 yards versus Hobby Lobby being 61 yards. So if I'm using two skeins, I'm going to get 20 more yards. So keep that in mind. This is how much I have left so far, and I still need to crank out a tail. And that's the Amazon. And I'm going to leave a link. There's so many beautiful colors, and you get two skeins for about $10, $9.99, and it's just a really good bargain. I wanted to start cranking out the head for those of you that might wonder how the fur yarn really works in our Addi. So for the head, we're going to start, since my little bear is going to be white with white, and I'm just going to cast on like I normally would and leave a long enough yarn tail that I'll show you why in a minute, so you don't confuse it with the second yarn tail you're going to have here in a minute. So just cast on, and before you get around, go ahead and reset your counter. Okay, so we're going to crank one row. And before we make it back to our black pin, we're going to cut off our yarn, take this last stitch, lay it down, and tie on our fur yarn. And I've done so many of these fur tubes, so this is just my preference. Okay, so now we're making sure it gets under these teeth and that it's all the way in our yarn guide. When I get halfway around so that it's now facing towards me, I do just the beginning of my knot and then come around, and look how nicely the first row might just be a little bit stiff, usually not very much, but then just start coming around. And we crank until we get to 33 rows. When we get to our 33rd row, here, let me get back to right before on the Addi, it'd be the black pin. We would snip this off, send it to the inside, come back on with the 4-ply, crank it till it's facing back here, do that beginning of a knot, and crank around one time, and then just cast off like we normally would. And that's how we're going to get our head tube. So we will cast on, crank one row, and we've set our row counter. When we get to the 33rd row, tie on our 4-ply, go around one time, and then when you're casting off by pulling up your 4-ply loops rather than the fur loops. That makes it so much easier to snug up each end and saves an incredible amount of fur yarn. Okay, so that's how we get the head done, and that's how we'll do all the other tubes for the legs, the tail, and the ears for tying on and tying off. All right, let's get started. Okay, so it's time to make this adorable little face. And so we're going to make two tubes, the top of the snout, the bottom of the snout, and then with our black or another color if you choose, we're going to make the nose. So for the lips, top and bottom or snout, we're going to crank out a tube that's 30 rows. The nose is going to be 13 rows. Okay, so stretch it out. And for the top and the bottom of the snout, we are going to fold it in half like we're making a beanie. And where we cinch it shut becomes the front of the snout, so we want it to be nice and neat. And we want to keep our strings to the outside because we're going to do something with them. So snug it up really snug. Tie it. Then thread up these yarn tails. They don't have to be quite this long. Just thread them up. And I like to play with the tube just for a second because sometimes when I'm looking at it, it seems like it already wants to curl one way better than the other. I don't know why. It could be my imagination. So this is going to be my curve. And I want to get this yarn tail up to the top. So just coming in and weaving it up through the rows. Both of them together till I get to the top. And I'll just pop out. And when we put the top lip and the bottom lip together, then I'll pull on this just a little bit, just to curve that up and give it just a little bit of a shape. Lay the top one on top of it, then lay the nose on top of that. And we'll end up tying all this together back at the back. It all gets pulled up into the head tube and just the ends of it stick out. So that's how we're going to make our face. So remember, 2 of these, 30 rows, 13 rows of your black for the nose. And now we can get started putting it together. Okay, decision time. If you want your bear to have a cute little tongue like our brown bear does, isn't that cute? Then grab yourself a piece of maybe, I'm trying to think of what the color, like a raspberry color or a red color, nice thick felt. All felt is not created equal. And just fold it in half and make sure it's long enough because we're going to glue it back at the back. And just keep trimming it until you get a size that you like, because you can cut more off, but you can't add to it. So I have my glue gun heating up. I'm going to just make sure that where I wove my yarn tails up, that's on the inside on both of these. Going to lay them down. This is going to become the front of my mouth. Put this in, put the top on, see if I like the size of it, and I think I do. It could be a little bit narrower. I might make it just a tiny little bit narrower. I think it's just, personal preference. Okay, and there's a right side and a wrong side to your felt. One side I've noticed seems to be a little shiny, so I like to put that down. Line this up. I think I like it just a little bit narrower. And if my glue gun is hot, I am going to secure this to the back with a couple little rows of glue and press it down. The yarn tails go in. We won't need that glue gun for a while, so I'm going to go ahead and unplug it. Okay, so thread up another piece of thread. Line up, here's your tongue. Put your lips together and line them up at the front. So I'm just going to tie on. Get a knot here. This is just to hold it together. We'll do both sides. And then just whip stitch down a couple stitches to hold this together. I'm going to come back where I started just because I want to tie off to my yarn tail that I started with. This is not going to show at all. It is going to be up inside the head. So tie that off and do the other side just like this side. Okay, with black yarn, Unless maybe you want to have a brown nose. I want mine black. 13 rows on your 22 pin, and we're just going to cinch up both ends. And this is going to sit on top of our lip. So let's put a little knot on each end. And one thing about this black yarn, you can't even see what you're doing. It is a little hard to work with. And put a knot in this end. Snug it up. And tie a knot. And then decide which side closed up the nicest. It looks the roundest, and that can be the front. And fold it in half and whip stitch it down. And I can't even see my stitches, I'm telling you. I don't even know where my needle's going, but I'm going to take several stitches, maybe three or four, towards the end of my nose. One more. So that when I lay that tube down, I get a nice little nose shape. See how nice that is? So I'm leaving the back of it more open. I'm going to go ahead and secure this with a knot so it can't come undone. And thread up my yarn tails. I have a reason, because since I like the way this is shaped, I want to bring, after I tie the knot, I want to bring my yarn back out to the end, out through the opening here, because when I lay this down on top of this, I want to bring these yarn tails down and give that little, that little darkness that comes on the lip like this. Let me show you my brown one. Like this. To give that definition, we'll just bring it down, go back in like where you can't see it. Okay, so when I find my needle, okay, so I'm going to thread both these up. We're getting ready to put the snout into our head tube. Okay, so this is the part where we stitched it together. And I've done a few of these like this. Don't let your nose get too far back. It is not a good look. Keep your nose up really close to your lip. It'll want to kind of move back on its own, but we want it up. So find yourself a stitch, and let's bury that black thread in there and bring it out at the back here. Okay, we pulled it through. Mine seems to be twisted, so I'm going to just spin it around a couple times until it's not twisted anymore. And pull them through. Bring my lip back down, and that'll give me that little black definition there that I want. Okay, so this is the bottom where we glued onto. And we can take all of our yarn tails, and we're going to take these two white ones. And here's where you can kind of give yours a little bit of a snicker or a snarl. If you pull on it a little bit, it'll kind of curl that lip down. Pull this one, it'll kind of curl that lip. And I kind of like that look. So I'm going to go ahead and tie mine together, and that's going to snug up the back. And tie it. We'll let my nose back up. Bring my lips back together. Make sure it's snug. And just tie off to my white ones. All this will be buried up inside that head, and you cannot see anything in that fur yarn. Okay. And here we have it. I'm going to cut these off just a little bit so they're not so unwieldy. And now, when we pull all of this up into our head tube, we can get all these yarn tails going in. Okay. And I think I want to snug it at the bottom, so I'm going to bring that on around so that my yarn tail's coming out underneath the chin. These are just loose yarn ends. Okay. Get my nose going back. We can control that when we're sewing. Here are my yarn tails. I want the two 4-plies to stay out. And sometimes you have to go in there and look for it, which I'll do in a minute. But anyway, this is our little face sticking out. And we're going to snug up around it. I'm going to find that other little piece of 4-ply right here, hiding in all that beautiful fur. And snug it up a little bit around that nose and lips. For now, until I'm ready to sew it. And when you sew it, you know, try to keep looking at it. Roll your fur yarn out so it's not rolled in. You won't be able to see the 4-ply that we cast on or off with because the fur is so forgiving. Snugging it up a little bit more, a little bit more. And another thing, because I had to resew my first one, I let it stick out too far. And I think because it's a little cute little stuffed animal, it looks better if we don't have a really huge mouth sticking out. If we just keep it kind of, I don't know, childlike. So I'm not going to sew with this because I want to be able to snug up. I'm going to get some white thread and start sewing around. I'm going to start right underneath the chin. Make sure that my tube is rolled out. When I get to the side of the mouth, I'm going to go under the top and the bottom lip just to hold it together. When I come up on the side of the nose, I'm going to go right into the V there and then up over the nose, back into the V so that the nose is held snugly in place. Bring it around and tie all the yarn tails together. Okay, so I have them all together. One more knot, and I'm going to bury all the threads down into this fur tube, going that direction. And there's my cute little face with a cute little red tongue. Alrighty, everything's buried. I have a cute little face. And now the fun part is putting on the eyes. And of course, I'm using my 24mm eyes. And my new absolutely favorite tool. I'll give you a link. There are plenty of these safety eye pliers to pick from in Amazon. You don't have to pick the ones that I chose, but I love it. And they have sizes. This will go up to 30mm. These are 24mm, and it does sit on here. If it was smaller, I could see it being a problem. And now we have to think about where we want our eyes to go, and we want one on each side of the nose. So I'm going to start with this one. I want it kind of at the corner of the nose, not too far back. And maybe one right here. Oops. There's no way to count this. It has to be done visual because you can't see rows in your fur yarn. I'm going to move this one up one. And we need to be lined up on the side of the nose the same. When we stuff it, we're bringing this forehead up like this. So I like the way this eye looks. So now with this tool, it has a little hole right here, and that's what the posts go in. So if I like that, I can take my backing, make sure that everything is clear back here and I don't have any, yarn hung up in it, and put the tool on it. And let me see if I'm really over that backing. And this is where the magic happens. It's so easy. And it just snapped twice. It is on there so secure. My days of struggling with these big safety eyes it's over. All right, so we can stuff just where you think you can't get any more stuffing in this head, and it is not going to separate or split your stitches or in any way compromise this. You can always get more stuffing in there, always. So we want to bring the forehead up. We want to stuff it out really full so that our head is big enough for our body. It's not going to be a good look if we have a little tiny head. So by forcing our stuffing up into the front, we want to really force it into the cheeks on the side so we have a nice fat little face. So I'm just taking my thumbs, and I'll dig out my yarn tails later if they get buried. So see how I'm just pushing it up into the cheeks? And when I think I have enough, I'm going to go back and add more. Okay, so here's my trick. When I have quite a bit of stuffing in here, I'm going to keep pulling it apart in the center and adding it more into the center because I want a big enough head for the proportions to look good. Okay, so I have a really stuffed out fat little head. I've closed up the back of my head here. I pulled out my other 4-ply yarn tail that I tied off the fur yarn to, and I'm snugging this up, tying it off. Going to just leave those hanging for now. And here's my cute little face. And one of the things that I like to do, because it makes me so happy, is put the ears on, because it just looks so cute with the ears. So I already made one so you can see what it looks like. And here's one that is fresh off of the machine. And so the way we're doing our ears, we're going to do 5 rows of our 4-ply. Then we're going to tie on our fur yarn and crank 2 more rows, tie on our 4-ply, and crank 5 more rows. So we're going to have a total of 12 rows, and then we're going to just cast off. And I'm going to snug these up, and I'll just let this go to this side, and then snug this one up and tie it together. Okay, so I have both yarn tails coming out on this side. Snugging it nice and tight to close up that hole. Knot it a couple times. And now we have 2 cute ears. And what a difference that makes. Now it really is adorable. I just love ears. So we're going to bury the fur yarn, send one up this way, one up this way, just so that we end up with our long yarn hanging down so we can sew with it. And where we started and ended right here, for some reason, once we bury the yarn, it kind of squares off the bottom and makes a perfect place to mount onto the head. So I will then thread this yarn up and bring it straight down to where all this knotting is. So I'm going to go ahead and bury my yarn tails, and I'll be back on. Alrighty, now that I have both my ears ready, I'm going to shorten one of these threads. So now I have a long one to sew with, and I'll tie off to this one. Position your head so it's looking right at you, and pop your ears up so you can decide where you want them to be. I like it right there. So I'm going to just start sewing this one all the way around. Here's my adorable little bear. All right, so we can set the head aside. And now we need 4 feet. So for our legs, we're going to cast on with 4-ply, then crank 1 row with the 4-ply, tie our fur yarn on, crank till we have 33 rows on our counter, tie on the 4-ply, go around 1 time, and cast off with that 4-ply. So we will cinch our tube closed on each end by our 4-ply. Take each one of these, because we're going to use that same technique where when we change from 4-ply to fur yarn, we're going to tie half of our knot. Then when we get it off the machine, we're going to make sure that we know which one snugs up the end of the tube, so we don't tie onto it instead. That's the one that snugs. Pull this nice and snug and tie a knot. And then this yarn tail will be one that we can tie off to when we're closing up the top of our tube. And so here we have our legs. So go onto each one of them and make sure that you have knotted your ends. You need 4 of them. So I wanted to bring the little brown bear up so you can see how the bottom of its feet look, and he's got some lint on him. But we need to decide what color would look good on our bear. I don't know what color fur yarn you're using, but I think on this one, I don't know, I think I'm just going to give it black paw pads. Okay, 17 rows, 4 of them. And we're not pulling it inside itself. We're just doing this. And since we're sewing around, let's just stretch it out. And mine has a little curve going, so that's going to be the inside of mine. So, thread up my needle. And this actually cranked out beautifully without any drop stitches. Feels just like it's a Red Heart Super Saver. I'm pretty sure that's probably what it is. So we're going to do all 4 paws exactly the same. So just, okay, everything's knotted and secured. So let's stretch this out. Okay, so what we're going to do is find the yarn tail that we actually snug up with and snug this up, get all the extra play out of it, but leave it loose so that we can adjust it. And we're going to take our paw pad, and I'm going to start at the back, but not right where I'm cinching. I don't want to trap that. And I'm going to sew it in to my fur yarn right on the edge, but not just getting into the cast on or cast off row. I want to get into the double loops of my 4-ply right here. So you can see it right here, how I'll have 2 loops on my needle. So I'm going in there like that. Going to grab a couple rows, actually a couple rows because they're cinched in. You can't really see the yarn all that well, but if we're going into the 4-ply, we can see that better than we can see if we're going into the fur. So we can see those loops. And going under another couple rows. Okay, let me find my next one. Okay, this one. So we just make it fit. So I might have snugged this up just a little bit too much. So bringing it around, if this is my center back, this is going to be my center front. So that's where I want this to end up. And so when I'm sewing around here, I'll just make that paw pad fit in there and just keep coming back into the same row on my paw pad. I am mattress stitching my paw pad, finding the next row on my end of my leg here, and I'm going to make this fit. Even if I have to go under 3 bars or do a little finessing, I'm going to make it fit in here. So I'm going to go all the way around this one. When I get to the back where I started, I'm going to just tie off to my yarn tail. And I want to make sure that I tie this yarn tail off because that's the cast on or cast off yarn, and that has to be secured. So as I come around, I'll tie it to my sewing yarn and then come on around. Okay, so I made it all the way around. I made sure that the two yarn tails that were cinching up the bottom of the tube, that I tied these two together so that the one that snugs it up is secure, and tied my black yarn onto it. Now I'm going to put some stuffing down in the bottom here for the paw pad. I'll do the other three off camera. So we're going to have a little bit of stuffing down there. Then we're going to thread up with some of our fur color yarn, so whatever color your bear is. And I'll show you how we're going to shape that foot. Okay, let's get our paw going the right direction. So if this is the front of our paw, we're going to take this tube and fold it all the way back so it's touching itself. Then we're going to push down and bring the front together. Okay, very front of the toe. I just push my stuffing down in a little better because we only have the stuffing in the toe right now. And look at that cute little shape. So get pretty close to the toe. Put your needle in. Get through both sides. And I'm going to just muscle mine through. I might have been in the mesh, I'm not sure. And tie this off to secure it. Okay, so that's our first stitch. Now we're going to press it back in so that we're touching. That's how we're going to, and we're going to push down in this way and sew up. And that's going to give us our cute little shape. It's almost too cute. And it's just so easy. So keeping it lined up. The hardest part of this is staying out of the mesh. Okay. Another stitch. Don't get them too far apart. And when you tie on, leave yourself enough yarn tail that you can bury it. And make sure you're really getting into your fur, because you'll think you're in the fur and you're just in the fuzz. Okay, getting up towards the top. And I will be pushing stuffing down in here. So I'm going to just keep doing that till I get up to the top of my paw. So these are smoothie straws, and I got 40 of them in Texas at our H-E-B for 99 cents. So I picked up a package of them. And something I did in my white bear that I did not do in the brown bear, so you might see it sticking out of the end of the tube, is I slipped a length of the Slurpee straw down into each leg tube. This is how much I cut off, so this much went into the leg, and I thought, well, it just might stiffen it up a little bit. I don't know if it made that much of a difference. It's something you could try or not try, because the brown bear is standing really well without the straw in there. But they're prototypes, and we're learning as we go. And I might keep putting the straw in there because it's flexible enough that it's not like you have a wooden dowel or something that you might think could hurt a child if they were running with it and fell on it. The straw would just bend. You know, it's plastic. So that's my tip. Put the straw in or don't put the straw in. If you do put the straw in, just stuff out all around it so the straw's kind of into the center of your leg. All right, that's my tip. Okay, so when you have your feet all stuffed out, feel them and make sure they all feel about the same. that you've stuffed up the back on each side of the, so the straw's just kind of embedded in the middle there. It's going to add a little stability to the leg. And now let's snug this up just a little bit. Remember, we have a pleat that we made right here. Taking some of the play out of here, out of the top. Straw has to be down inside. Okay. Have a nice little rounded paw, little leg here. And when I'm happy that I've got it closed up pretty good, I'm going to use my small short 4-ply that the fur yarn was tied onto and tie this together. And I'm going to bury my yarn tails. So I'm going to do that and try to make all 4 of them be very, very similar. And I will come back when I have all my yarn tails buried and all the tops closed. And we're going to put them on really quickly. Let's get a long needle and sew our legs on. And we're going to go through that pull noodle so that when we snug them up together, we're not completely crushing the body. That pull noodle will keep its shape. So I'm going to thread up a needle nice and long with double yarn so it's nice and sturdy. Okay, so we don't want to go in close to the top or our leg will just flop out. We want to go down in this part of our leg. So coming in from the inside, and I'm going to come back in so we don't really see it on the top here. Coming back to the other side. Okay, so now it's kind of hidden under here. When we pull it, we're not going to see it crushing it on the outside. So going in, and we want it to be kind of high. We can still reach in back here and feel where we're going. So I'm going to bring my needle in right in here. Okay, so now I'm going to get my second leg and make sure the toes are going the same direction. And I'm going to pull out the straw now. So I went in on the front side, so I'm going to come down and do this on the front side. Okay, and then come back in so that I'm just going to be underneath here and then back through. So it's not going completely over the top of my fur. Okay, so it's kind of hidden now. I'm going to go back in through that pull noodle, but in a different position, not the same stitch that I came out of. Back through on the other side. I tightened just close the hole up here on the butt a little bit. Snugging this up. Pulling these legs together. Worked pretty good. Tie one time here. Whoops. My yarn ends are just doing me in here. Nice and snug. I'm going to just leave these hanging out for right now. And my little guy can stand up on them, that's for sure. And this straw just came out, so I'm going to go ahead and thread up again and put the other paws on. Pulling it snug. Nice and snug. You'll need nice strong yarn, that's for sure. All right. All right, little standing body. All right, if you like the way your body's stuffed out, you can go ahead and close up your tubes. Okay, so I'm going to tie this together permanently. Give it a triple knot. And bury my yarn tails. Okay, so spin your legs around until you get the best profile. So I like mine like this. It's nice and tall. Pretty happy with the amount of stuffing I have in here, so I'm going to go ahead and close up the back of it. Okay, so I'm going to reinforce this by going back around my stitches here so I can get it closed up tighter. Just working around. Okay, just about ready to try it again. There we go. That worked better. And now I'll just go across it and close it up. Of course, this is Hobby Lobby. I love this yarn. It's really soft. And I'm going to tell you a secret. I made the first body with a different yarn. I don't know where I got it, but it was one of those big packs. It was not from Walmart, so it might have been from Hobby Lobby. And the whole time I was working with it, oh, I just wasn't sure. It just wasn't like this yarn at all. I ended up taking off my legs, taking off the head, and cranking out a new body tube and just starting over. So if something looks a little bit off to you, that's why. But I thought I'll just zoom in so you don't see the old body, and maybe you won't even know whatever happened. But this yarn feels really good, and it's such a nice little body. So there we have it. Our little bear. And now we can put the head up on it. It's just such a cute little baby bear. So position the head where you think you would like to see it be. And the way I start mine is I always get my yarn and then decide where I'm going to start sewing, and that's where I tie on. I have a yarn mess down here. There we go. Okay, I'm going to get a nice long piece of yarn. This looks okay, so I want to just, oh, so cute. Look at that face. I want to perch it up here, decide where I'm going to start sewing. I don't want it coming too far down. I kind of want it up a little bit. So I'm going to come right about here and go in nice and deep, right in the center. Leave myself a yarn tail and tie a knot right here. And now, even if I have to go around my head a couple times, that's fine, because that's how, this is just so cute. If you could just see it like I'm seeing it. So I'm coming in right about here, a couple fingers back from where we have that muzzle sewn in there. There we go. And I'm going to just start sewing around. And the first time I sew around, I'll be kind of in, and the next time I come around, I'll come a little further out on it and stabilize this head. So I think I'm going to let it just kind of, let its feet just flay back. So it's a little more, and that's a cute look too, let me tell you. This is my second time around, and this will really help to sturdy it. Okay, so now I can see better where I need to come out on the head to get it to stabilize. More out onto the back right here. And so that's what I'm doing. More out onto its back. That pulls that head up. So we have a happy looking creature. One that's looking up at us instead of one that's looking down at the ground. Still coming around. All right, I've sewn around my head twice, and I'm really trying to get these snug up against the body, really pulling hard. That's why I have double yarn tails. And I'm going to go ahead and tie a knot in here now, because they really came loose while I was sewing the head on. One knot. Still need a tail, so cast on with your 4-ply, crank around, then before you get back to your black pin, set your counter to 0. I did 9 rows because they have a pretty small little tail. I had trouble even finding a picture of a bear's tail. But anyway, so where you get around to 9 rows, then tie on your 4-ply, crank around one time and cast off. So we'll be pulling with our 4-ply on each end. Make sure you have knotted where you switched from 4-ply to the fur yarn. And then just let all those yarn tails go to the inside. And we'll just cinch it up. Gotta find the yarn tail on this side to pull. I think it might be that one. There we go. Everything just going to the inside. Alrighty, so I'm leaving it kind of long, not cinching it completely closed because I want to have my tail that hangs down. And so I'm just going to, I'll sew on with this one, but with this one, I'm just going to whip stitch it closed. So when I put it on my little baby bear, I have a tail that looks like this. So I'll need to knot this so it stays closed. Okay, snugging it up. And as a matter of fact, I have my little 4-ply in here from where I switched from 4-ply to the fur. That'll make an even better yarn tail to cinch up onto. So I'm going to close it by tying it to the 4-ply yarn tail. That really cinches it up. Okay, and I'll snip these off and let those go to the, let that yarn tail go to the inside. And now go ahead and whip stitch this closed. Getting into the fur, not just my little 4-ply yarn. Okay, I'm up at the top now. So I'll just tie off to this other yarn tail up at the top. And I have a cute little tail now. Just bury one of the yarn tails down inside. We only need one to sew with. Or you could have left it up there and used it to tie off to after you sewed around. Okay, so off camera, I went ahead and we had tied our legs, but I went ahead and took the long yarn ends where I tied it on the top, brought them to the bottom, tied them again, and just snipped them off where they wouldn't show. And we'll take this little bear's tail and that's so cute. Sew it back here to the bum above where we cinched up our opening. And it'll just look like this. So I'm going to sew around off camera. I'm going to let it still flop a little bit. I'll just bring it up. So sew it like right in here. Come around to the top, knot off, and bury my yarn tail. So I sewed my tail on. I went around 2.5 times just so there'd be more stitches in the body and the tail to make it more secure. And then I tied it off underneath the tail and buried my yarn tail. Now I have a little opening right here where I cinched the chest shut, and I want to close that up. So I'm just going to go in, tie a yarn. So I have a yarn tail to tie off to, like this. And I'm going to just take a couple stitches to close this up, just from left to right. And that closes it right up, just a couple stitches, and I'm going to tie off to this yarn tail. Now it looks so much better. And I did bury the yarn tail from when I sewed my head on. So at this point, all the yarn tails are buried and hidden. The legs have been nice and double knotted, and those yarn tails were cut off underneath the legs. All right, there's my little bear. So I wanted to say, if you think your legs aren't quite secure enough so that it stands, then it could just be that you didn't snug your yarn up tight enough. So just repeat. Go through again, pull through your noodle, work it through, and tie it really, really tight again. And I might even do that on mine. I haven't quite decided yet. But because of this being white and that cute little red tongue, and the fact that I know that this is going to go to a child, I want to give it a heart. So I'm going to pull my red felt out again, and I'll show you what I had in mind. Let me just slip him back here. All right, so I'm heating up my glue gun. And just like we learned how to do, at least I did, in school, we're just going to cut a heart out. Like this. It almost always looks cute no matter what. And here's my heart. I think that might be just a tiny bit big, so I'm going to make it just a little bit smaller. And here's my heart. Okay, I'm going to be really brave and glue this on. Here it is. One time, one chance to get it right. And there's my bear with the heart. I love the way the fur yarn feels. So I think it's a success. I hope that you will like, subscribe, that you'll order your Amazon fur yarn. $10 for two 71-yard skeins, so you can get by without having to buy a third skein, and that you'll make a bear, any color bear you want. So when I go back, and now that I have my bear and I filmed the beginning, I'll show you the brown bear and the white bear. They're both adorable. God bless you, and thank you for watching.